Okay, so before we jump into the next lesson, I just wanted to go over very briefly what the cut page is. So a big misconception is that it's a edit page replacement, and they don't understand if I have the edit page, why would I use the cut page if they both are editors? And if I'm using the cut page, why would I need the edit page? Well, the best way to understand it is to realize that the cut page is kind of an accessory to the edit page. It does a lot of what you do in the edit page, but it's designed more so for the beginning of a workflow and especially on a smaller screen. So it's designed more to like bring in footage, organize your footage, do your rough cut, your second cut, your third cut, and then once you start needing those more detailed polishing tools, that's when you move over to the edit page. It may sound a little weird at first, but once you actually start using it, it's much more efficient. The way I kind of explain it sometimes, if you're also a photographer, which a lot of filmmakers are, is kind of like comparing Photoshop and Lightroom, right? Photoshop can do everything that Lightroom can do, right? But if you're a photographer, why would you use Photoshop from beginning to end when Lightroom has what you need? Just those tools. It's faster, it's more efficient, you don't have to mess with a lot of the extras that Photoshop has. So imagine the cut page is more of something fast, efficient, and very fine-tuned to very specific tasks, kind of like Lightroom is. And then the edit page is kind of like where you can do a ton more and do a lot more things. And so with that, the cut page is like an accessory to the edit page, and they work together. So with that being said, let's jump into the next lesson. Just have that in mind. You're not replacing the edit page with the cut page. You're basically combining two great pages so that you become much faster and much more efficient as an editor. So let's jump right into the next lesson. I'll see you there. Hey, what's up? So in this lesson, I want to go over the interface of the cut page. Now, I do want to bring up right away to kind of ignore this public beta thing. I just wanted to make this class a little bit future-proof, and as of this recording, actually at this point a few public betas have been released, so the full version that's not beta should be out any day now. But don't worry about that. That should only really affect me. So let's jump in. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you want to remember, especially if you are brand new to DaVinci Resolve, or if you have been using DaVinci Resolve and you've been using the edit page, keep in mind that the cut page is not a replacement for the edit page. It's simply an accessory in it. And also keep in mind that it's designed for, what a lot of people need, especially people in the professional world, and that is a way to cut quickly and efficiently, and that's what it is. And it's also meant for smaller screens, or it's not meant for smaller screens, I guess I should say. It has been optimized for smaller screens. And this class, actually, I normally would create my classes on my 27-inch monitor that I have at my office, but for this class, for the cut page, I'm actually doing this on my 13-inch MacBook Pro, just so I can show you and have a more accurate representation of what the cut page looks like on a smaller screen, because it is optimized to be on a smaller screen. And I think if I would have done this class on a 27-inch screen, this interface would probably look pretty different than it actually might in real life. So with that being said, I think that's the only little bit of preface I want to get out of the way. Let's jump right in. And so right away, before we do anything, let's just import some clips. So you have two ways of doing that. I typically right click, import media, or you can just go up here, import media, or you can go to import media folder, which is what I'm going to do in this case. And so I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to my Skillshare drive, I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to do that. And what that did, some of you that have some editing experience will pretty much understand that whatever hierarchy or system I have on my hard drive, that's basically what it brought in. So I had that adventure media assets, my media files, my music right there, and then my voiceover. So rather than, kind of going the slow way and going in here and importing, and then going here and importing a few clips, or selecting and then creating a folder and importing the music, and then creating a voiceover folder and importing that, it's much easier to just simply, go here, import media folder. if you have things organized on your hard drive and do it that way. And so now I can click in the top left, go to media, and already you're kind of seeing the benefits of the cut page where all the most commonly used features and functions are right here at your fingertips. It's a very streamlined interface where you don't have all the extras. And that's one of the things I love about it, and that's one of the reasons why I use it. So let's jump in. Again, this is where your bin list is, or otherwise known as folders in other programs. These are just folders. Importing media, individual clips, folders, and then this here I will skip for now. Sync clips has to do with multicam editing, which we may cover in a future lesson, probably a bonus lesson. And then relink media is just what it sounds like. You open Resolve, or maybe you're sharing a project with someone, and you open it up and there's things that are unlinked. That's basically a quick and easy way to relink media. And then here is one of the bigger features of the cut page. It's the different view modes. So what we're seeing now is the media pool right up here. That's the folder that we have selected. And this is probably the more common way that we see files in, whether it's Final Cut Pro or Premiere. Same thing here, double click, the file shows up here, and then I can, scroll through just like that. Pick your in points, out points, and again, just like every other program, you hit spacebar to play, spacebar to pause. And then what I did was, I for marking an in point, O for marking an out point. That's getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just so those of you that are really curious at that point, that's basically how you would do that, just like any other program. And so now what I want to show you is these different view modes. So this one here is called metadata view. And what this will do is simply show you a clip with additional metadata. All these are kind of the same right now just because it's sort of a stock footage thing. But if I take you to, say, a different clip, like let's say this shot here of one of my other classes, you can see it'll just give you a bit more information, like the date, the starting time code, the name of the file, that sort of thing. And this can be very useful on bigger projects. And then here we have the strip view, which is also similar. If I just simply, for example, double click here, it has the metadata as well, file name, frame rate, resolution. So here you can see that you can simply just skim through to see clips. So you can double click again, say on this one. And this is a very quick and easy way to watch through shots. Typically you would have to, it's a little bit slower, but part of editing and really being fast and efficient is things like knowing keyboard shortcuts and doing things in 2 clicks, or one keyboard shortcut that typically would involve, for example, like double clicking, scrolling through to find something, marking an in point, marking an out point. And for example, in this view, sometimes it's a lot faster to just, I can maybe double click on this shot here and then just go skim through to watch it. And I can mark my in and out points here. So again, just built on efficiency. And then the next one here is one that's pretty familiar, maybe list view. No image, no icon. This one just has the most metadata if you want to do that and look at clips that way and organize them a certain way. And then of course, I'll just switch back to this more common view. And then of course, you can also just search here, like if I'm looking for one called, mountain, search that way. And then I can organize here by the media by, right now it's by time code. I can do it by date created, clip name, the different bins. So this is all optional, but just wanted to show you. And then ascending or descending order. For example, if you do it in an alphabetical order, ascending might be, A at the top, descending might put the Z's at the top. So all options you have there. And so when you start editing, I do want to spend a good amount of time on this interface page. It may seem like it, just going over the interface might be a little bit too much, but I'd say the core of what makes the cut page is the interface. The fact that it's streamlined, that it's simplified, and that all the more commonly used tools are right there. So that's why I am going to spend a little bit more time than you might typically spend on the cut page. And also because honestly, when people jump in, I know when I jumped in, one of the biggest learning curves is basically looking at this and being like, okay, what is going on? What's this? What's that? Why does everything look a little weird? Why does everything look a certain way? So by spending a little bit more time here, I think will be a good foundation for the actual editing, because I think once you understand the interface and we get to the actual editing, that part is going to be a much narrower learning curve. It's going to be much quicker to pick up. That's where things are going to start, looking a little bit more familiar again. So with that said, let's keep going. So another great thing about this layout is, let's say we're ready to start editing. Okay, so right now we have these three icons. We have this one here, which is just the source clip. In other words, the clip that's right over here in the media bin. And then we have source tape. And then we have as well as the timeline, which is literally just the timeline down here. But one of the new functions is this kind of old school source tape option. So here's what this is. To understand this, it kind of comes from, back in the day when you would go out and shoot. It wasn't digital. It was on a video camera, for example. And when you used to shoot on video cameras, you shot on a cassette tape. Okay, some of you may not even know what a cassette tape is, depending how old you are, but you would shoot on a cassette tape and you could not just go through and easily look at all your clips and click on this one and then click on that one. There's obviously a lot of benefits to this, but there's actually also some benefits to doing it the old school way, where if I click on this, what happens is it takes all of my shots in my media pool and it lays them all out right here as one giant clip. Okay, so rather than having to go here and then scrub through and watch through your footage and pick the good bits, which a lot of editors do, and then go here, watch through this one, scroll, select the good bits, and then here, grab your select. You see all these extra clicks add up, a lot of extra wasted time, but this makes things a lot easier so that you can just hit play. You can go through and it just, as one clip finishes, it jumps over to the next clip. And sometimes this can be a very quick and easy way to watch dailies, to watch your footage, to choose your selects and start bringing them down and marking shots, favoriting things, taking notes on them, rather than going through and clicking on each shot one at a time. So I would highly recommend, playing with that. Again, it's, it just takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you actually start using it, I think you'll see how many benefits it has, and I think you'll really like it. So now let's just cover a few more things here. So this is basically, the time code, the duration. If I, for example, click here, tells me the duration. That's all kind of pretty basic stuff. And then this we'll get to in another lesson. It's how we handle proxies. And then here we just pick our resolution. By default, this is a 1080 timeline. And then of course we have, if you want to mute the audio. And if you click on the clips, they have the little music note there. Those are the ones that have audio attached. So if I click on this one, for example, obviously audio meters. And then these little three bars here is to resize the timeline, which again, meant for a small screen. So if you just grab these here, you can use that to resize it here in case you want to see more of the timeline, or if you want to see more of the actual playback, you can make that bigger. To show you a comparison, let me just drop in a clip. So I'm just going to grab that and just pick any old random shot out, and I'm just going to grab that, drop that in. And if I go over here, you can see how much smaller the screen is. Like if I'm playing back, you can see how much smaller it is by default, and there's all these additional, windows, which is great, it's what a lot of people are used to seeing, but a lot of this stuff we, don't use all of the time, and it's just taking up space, especially for a smaller screen. And so if I go back here, you can see how much bigger this is. And in the other one, it was basically, about that size. So I'm just going to actually delete that for now and go back to my folder here with my media, and I'm just double clicking on that. Okay, and then just a few things that I do want to cover. Most of these down here on the lower half, I am actually going to cover in the next lesson where we start going over some of the basic editing. But for now, just a few things here. And then here we have our, our different editing tools, which again, I'll go over in the next lesson, but just so you know what that is. Obviously, here's the time code. So if I grab this, I'm just going to grab this whole shot here and just drop it in here. Obviously, this is the time code of your actual project right here. Okay. And then over here, we just have a few more timeline options. Some that maybe I'll go over now is simply, let's say if I grab that, and then I'm going to grab this that has a little bit of audio, in, out, place that there. Okay. So, here we have to enlarge the track. So if we want to see that a little bit bigger, or we can click it again to collapse it. And the same thing with this, sometimes it's helpful just to see a timeline a little bit bigger to enlarge it. Like for example, there we can see the audio, locking, muting the track, and then just disabling the track all together if we don't want to see it. So we click that, we turn it off. And then of course it is labeled with the V2 track or video 2 and audio 2, and then V1 or video 1. Okay, and then lastly, what I will go over is kind of the big stuff. Obviously right now, like I said, we are in the media pool. We have the sync bin, which again, this is related to, kind of connected to this sync clips for multicam editing, which we'll get to in a future lesson. This is pretty easy transitions where we can go through and, just preview transitions. Again, I'm not clicking anything, just like on the clips preview. I'm not clicking, I'm just kind of scrubbing my trackpad of my MacBook over, and it's just so you can kind of preview transitions. And of course, if you want to drop them in here and add them in. Same thing for titles, so you can just preview all of these different titles that we have, from very basic stuff like lower thirds, very basic titles, to these, more animated titles that we can check out here. So everything easy that you can just grab and drop in. So everything's just really here right at our fingertips. And then of course, all these different effects we have as well, in case you want to add. So I go here and grab that. You want to add these different effects. There are glitch effect. There are tons of effects in DaVinci Resolve that you can just very quickly and easily, add in all these different effects. Some, are maybe a little cheesy, but could be useful. But you can have a lot of fun just going through here and just testing them, going through what they all do. And then of course here, if you want to ever see something in full screen, as it says, click on that to watch your project in full screen, escape to exit, or the other keyboard shortcut for that, which you may know is Command F. There we go. And then, another tool that every editor has is the inspector. This is what we would click on to go through and zoom in and out of a shot, reframe a shot, do all kinds of things to it. If you want to crop, composite modes, opacity, stabilization, speed changes, all of these tools here for audio and video is in the inspector. And then there's also a quick export option, which, you do have your typical deliver page where you go and, export things with a lot of fine detail. That's for a different class. Or you can check out this class here if you want to know a little bit more about that. But for now, we're just, what the quick export is, again, having to do with speed. If you just need to quickly spit out a file, you can go in here, select what you want to export or where you want to export it to, and then just hit export, and it's that easy. Okay, so I think that is a good introduction to the interface of the cut page. In the next lesson, we are going to start covering the basic editing tools. I'm going to go over a few of these tools in more detail, and I will see you there.